AASA is very pleased to welcome Dr. Alonso, the CEO of Baltimore City Public Schools, for a conversation on college access and success. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Welcome to Baltimore.
As the manager of a large urban system, what do you see as a school district leader's role in setting up that system to guide, manage, and support all students toward post-secondary success?
The role of the leader of the organization is always going to be primarily about setting expectations and then figuring out how to move people towards those expectations. And in Baltimore, for such a long time, the challenge was to graduate kids. We were plagued for decades with a huge dropout problem. Half the kids were not graduating from high school. So when I arrived 5 years ago, the first order of business, to be perfectly honest, was about the task at hand. How were we going to hold on to the kids? And we were remarkably successful in a short period of time. Within 4 years, we had cut the dropout rate by over 50%. The challenge then became, how did we reorient the district so that we would be as successful with the question of what were the kids doing after they graduated as we had been with the question of just getting them to a finish line that is not really a finish line, is an intermediate line. And a lot of our work over the past couple of years has been around what does it take to make sure that when our kids graduate, they have met certain standards that ensure that they're going to be ready. And when I say ready, I don't simply mean ready to go to college. I mean ready to be successful in the workforce, ready to be successful at whatever it is that they choose to do. When I arrived, AP courses were being offered in only 14 high schools in the city. Now they're being offered in 29. We have doubled the number of kids who are scoring 3 in AP exams. Helping the kids, for example, filled financial aid applications has become almost obsessive for us, since we have so many kids who haven't had any exposure to what it means to survive in college and believe that they might not be able to do what in reality they're able to do with some help.
When we look at the data and we talk about wanting to raise high school graduation rates and increase post-secondary access and success, it's clear that the biggest gains can really be made in low-income, minority, first-generation college populations. What are some of the strategies Baltimore City is employing to really raise the achievement level of those groups?
Some of the levers have been about the school. How can schools become more innovative? How can schools become more creative? We have pushed resources into the schools, and we have asked schools to play with time, play with money, play with people in order to stretch their possibilities. At the same time, we have been very serious about a set of guidance elements and elements that cut across the entire organization that are about standards. We think that if students are going to be successful, and 16, 17, 18-year-old kids have huge agency, and we ignore that agency to our peril. We want them to be able to see that they have a possibility of success in a setting other than high school. The most desired high school in Baltimore City is not a magnet school. It's no longer Poly or City College. It is a small charter school called Coppin Academy, which is sited on the grounds of Coppin, a state university. And Coppin, even though it's a relatively new school, gets 19 applications for every seat. That is, I think, because they are located in a university, and kids want to feel the connection, want to feel part of something that transcends, and parents have bought into the idea that this is a great place for their kids. So we're exploring that possibility of more kids being in early college settings.
Can you talk a little bit about how Baltimore City is raising expectations and signaling college importance to students?
Making sure that every 10th grader takes the PSAT. Regardless of how they're achieving in school, there's no selectivity there. that's about signaling that we believe that all our kids can succeed, and that if we work at it, that we can give every kid a chance. Guidance counselors are so important in this conversation. I mean, the way in which they track kids informally, the way in which they provide social capital to kids that they think can succeed is, I think, quite remarkable. So how do we work with our guidance counselors so that they see their role in a particular way? And then the awareness of our larger community about this conversation is huge. You know, I attend as many graduations as I can every late May and early June, and they're huge celebrations because for many of our parents, you know, their child graduating is a huge culmination, and part of what we are trying to communicate is, you know, let us help you so that you can have another culmination. So we, you know, we print the names of the kids who are going on to college. We announce the scholarships, you know, one by one. We continually try to communicate that the work for us is not simply about graduating the kids for high schools, but in making sure that there's a, you know, kind of journey that transcends.
And if ninth grade's important, we surmise that the transitions from middle school to high school must really be important as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how Baltimore City is structured to manage those transitions through the system?
The question of what happens with ninth grade retention, which I agree is huge, is for me a systemic conversation that engages what's happening in the early grades. What we see in Baltimore, and is consistent across the country, is that kids do better in 5th grade than in 6th grade. They do better in 6th and 7th, and 7th and 8th, and then there's a cliff. And then everybody starts talking about hormones and peer culture. But something is happening early on that starts, you know, sending kids in the wrong direction. So part of the conversation for us is what's happening in the middle grades. Why is it that kids who are performing at advanced in 3rd or 4th grade are falling into the proficient or basic range when they're in the middle grades? What's happening with the concentration of kids in particular high schools? Why is it that there are particular high schools where almost every single freshman is theoretically, quote-unquote, a kid at risk?
K-12 leaders historically have concerned themselves with moving students through the system to graduate from high school. Secretary Duncan has asked that high schools reform themselves from last-stop destinations to launch pads. What advice would you give to other school leaders to transform a high school to a launch pad high school?
It's something that is going to require communities to come together, understand the huge dimensions of the problem, and dedicate themselves to solving or providing solutions in ways that don't scapegoat the kids in their communities. And I think that we in Baltimore have been very successful about avoiding that scapegoating of the kids in the past few years, because that, I feel, at some level was our greatest problem in the past. If we felt that the problem was with the kids or with poverty or with the communities, then it absolved the schools and the institutions of any responsibility. That's not what we are. We are still challenged by problems of practice. How do you in 4 years get a kid who might be 2 years below grade level to a place where they not only graduate but they succeed when they move on? I mean, that's a technical problem of how do we use the time, how do we engage, how do we do in a short period of time what normally takes much longer. And it requires that people change the way they do things.
Well, AASA would like to thank you very much, Dr. Andres Alonso, CEO of Baltimore City Public Schools, for some great insights today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.